the road, his body swaying to the torture of his mental distress. He had been made to drink his wife's health and safety several times, and now Tom shouted, "All hands stand by! One more drink, and she's here." Joe brought the glasses on a waiter, and served the party. I reached for one of the two remaining glasses, but Joe growled under his breath, "Drop that! Take the other!" Which I did. Henry was served last. He had hardly swallowed his drink when the clock began to strike. He listened till it finished, his face growing pale and paler. Then he said, "Boys, I'm sick with fear. Help me. I want to lie down." They helped him to the sofa. He began to nestle and drowse, and presently spoke like one talking in his sleep, and said, "Did I hear horses' feet? Have they come?" One of the veterans answered, close to his ear, "It was Jimmy Parish come to say the party got delayed, but they're right up the road a piece, and coming along. Her horse is lame, but she'll be here in half an hour." "Oh, I'm so thankful nothing has happened." He was asleep almost before the words were out of his mouth. In a moment those handy men had his clothes off, and had tucked him into his bed in the chamber where I had washed my hands. They closed the door and came back. Then they seemed preparing to leave, but I said, "Please don't go, gentlemen. She won't know me. I am a stranger." They glanced at each other. Then Joe said, "She? Poor thing. She's been dead 19 years." "Dead?" "That or worse. She went to see her folks half a year after she was married, and on her way back, on a Saturday evening, the Indians captured her within 5 miles of this place, and she's never been heard of since." "And he lost his mind in consequence?" "Never has been sane an hour since. But he only gets bad when that time of year comes round. Then we begin to drop in here 3 days before she's due, to encourage him up and ask if he's heard from her, and Saturday we all come and fix up the house with flowers, and get everything ready for a dance. We've done it every year for 19 years. The first Saturday there was 27 of us, without counting the girls. There's only 3 of us now, and the girls are all gone. We drug him to sleep, or he would go wild. Then he's all right for another year. Thinks she's with him till the last 3 or 4 days come round. Then he begins to look for her, and gets out his poor old letter, and we come and ask him to read it to us. Lord, she was a darling." End of The Californian's Tale. This is section 20 of The $30,000 Bequest and Other Stories by Mark Twain. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. A Helpless Situation. Once or twice a year I get a letter of a certain pattern, a pattern that never materially changes in form and substance. Yet I cannot get used to that letter. It always astonishes me. It affects me as the locomotive always affects me. I say to myself, "I have seen you 1,000 times. You always look the same way. Yet you are always a wonder, and you are always impossible. To contrive you is clearly beyond human genius. You can't exist. You don't exist. Yet here you are." I have a letter of that kind by me, a very old one. I yearn to print it, and where is the harm? The writer of it is dead years ago, no doubt, and if I conceal her name and address, her this-world address, I am sure her shade will not mind. And with it I wish to print the answer which I wrote at the time, but probably did not send. If it went, which is not likely, it went in the form of a copy, for I find the original still here, pigeonholed with the said letter. To that kind of letters we all write answers which we do not send, fearing to hurt where we have no desire to hurt. I have done it many a time, and this is doubtless a case of the sort. The letter. X, California, June 3, 1879. Mr. S. L. Clemens, Hartford, Connecticut. Dear Sir, you will doubtless be surprised to know who has presumed to write and ask a favor of you. Let your memory go back to your days in the Humboldt mine 6263. You will remember, you and Clagett and Oliver and the old blacksmith Tilou lived in a lean-to, which was halfway up the gulch, and there were 6 log cabins in the camp, strung pretty well separated up the gulch from its mouth at the desert to where the last claim was at the divide. The lean-to you lived in was the one with the canvas roof that the cow fell down through one night, as told about by you in Roughing It. My Uncle Simmons remembers it very well. He lived in the principal cabin halfway up the divide, along with Dixon and Parker and Smith. It had 2 rooms, one for kitchen and the other for bunks, and was the only one that had. You and your party were there on the great night, the time they had dried apple pie. Uncle Simmons often speaks of it. It seems curious that dried apple pie should have seemed such a great thing, but it was, and it shows how far Humboldt was out of the world and difficult to get to, and how slim the regular bill of fare was. 16 years ago. It is a long time. I was a little girl then, only 14. I never saw you. I lived in Washoe. But Uncle Simmons ran across you every now and then, all during those weeks that you and party were there working your claim, which was like the rest. The camp played out long and long ago. There wasn't silver enough in it to make a button. You never saw my husband, but he was there after you left, and lived in that very lean-to. A bachelor then, but married to me now. He often wishes there had been a photographer there in those days. He would have taken the lean-to. He got hurt in the old Hal Clayton claim that was abandoned like the others, putting in a blast and not climbing out quick enough, though he scrambled the best he could. It landed him clear down on the trail and hit a Piute. For weeks they thought he would not get over it, but he did, and is all right now. Has been ever since. This is a long introduction, but it is the only way I can make myself known. The favor I ask, I feel assured your generous heart will grant. Give me some advice about a book I have written. I do not claim anything for it, only it is mostly true and as interesting as most of the books of the times. I am unknown in the literary world, and you know what that means unless one has someone of influence, like yourself, to help you by speaking a good word for you. I would like to place the book on royalty basis plan with anyone you would suggest. This is a secret from my husband and family. I intend it as a surprise in case I get it published. Feeling you will take an interest in this, and, if possible, write me a letter to some publisher, or, better still, if you could see them for me and then let me hear, I appeal to you to grant me this favor. With deepest gratitude, I thank you for your attention. One knows, without inquiring, that the twin of that embarrassing letter is forever and ever flying in this and that and the other direction across the continent, in the mails, daily, nightly, hourly, unceasingly, unrestingly. It goes to every well-known merchant, and railway official, and manufacturer, and capitalist, and mayor, and congressman, and governor, and editor, and publisher, and author, and broker, and banker, in a word, to every person who is supposed to have influence. It always follows the one pattern. You do not know me, but you once knew a relative of mine, etc., etc. We should all like to help the applicants, we should all be glad to do it, we should all like to return the sort of answer that is desired, but, well, there is not a thing we can do that would be a help, for not in any instance does that letter ever come from anyone who can be helped. The struggler whom you could help does his own helping. It would not occur to him to apply to you, stranger. He has talent and knows it, and he goes into his fight eagerly and with energy and determination, all alone, preferring to be alone. That pathetic letter which comes to you from the incapable, the unhelpable, how do you who are familiar with it answer it? What do you find to say? You do not want to inflict a wound. You hunt ways to avoid that. What do you find? How do you get out of your hard place with a contented conscience? Do you try to explain? The old reply of mine to such a letter shows that I tried that once. Was I satisfied with the result? Possibly, and possibly not. Probably not. Almost certainly not. I have long ago forgotten all about it. But anyway, I append my effort. The reply: I know Mr. H., and I will go to him, dear madam, if upon reflection you find you still desire it. There will be a conversation. I know the form it will take. It will be like this: Mr. H. How do her books strike you? Mr. Clemens. I am not acquainted with them. H. Who has been her publisher? C. I don't know. H. She has one, I suppose. C. I I think not. H. Ah, you think this is her first book? C. Yes, I suppose so. I think so. H. What is it about? What is the character of it? C. I believe I do not know. H. Have you seen it? C. Well, no, I haven't. H. Ah, how long have you known her? C. I don't know her. H. Don't know her? C. No. H. Ah, how did you come to be interested in her book, then? C. Well, she wrote and asked me to find a publisher for her, and mentioned you. H. Why should she apply to you instead of me? C. She wished me to use my influence. H. Dear me, what has influence to do with such a matter? C. Well, I think she thought you would be more likely to examine her book if you were influenced. H. Why, what we are here for is to examine books, anybody's book that comes along. It's our business. Why should we turn away a book unexamined because it's a stranger's? It would be foolish. No publisher does it. On what ground did she request your influence, since you do not know her? She must have thought you knew her literature and could speak for it. Is that it? C. No, she knew I didn't. H. Well, what then? She had a reason of some sort for believing you competent to recommend her literature, and also under obligations to do it? C. Yes, I knew her uncle. H. Knew her uncle? C. Yes. H. Upon my word! So you knew her uncle. Her uncle knows her literature. He endorses it to you. The chain is complete. Nothing further needed. You are satisfied, and therefore— C. No, that isn't all. There are other ties. I know the cabin her uncle lived in the mines. I knew his partners, too. Also, I came near knowing her husband before she married him, and I did know the abandoned shaft where a premature blast went off, and he went flying through the air and clear down to the trail and hit an Indian in the back, with almost fatal consequences. H. To him or to the Indian? C. She didn't say which it was. H. With a sigh. It certainly beats the band. You don't know her, you don't know her literature, you don't know who got hurt when the blast went off, you don't know a single thing for us to build an estimate of her book upon. So far as I see, I knew her uncle. You are forgetting her uncle. H. Oh, what use is he? Did you know him long? How long was it? C. Well, I don't know that I really knew him, but I must have met him, anyway. I think it was that way. You can't tell about these things, you know, except when they are recent. H. Recent? When was all this? C. 16 years ago. H. What a basis to judge a book upon! At first you said you knew him, and now you don't know whether you did or not. C. Oh, yes, I know him. Anyway, I thought I did. I'm perfectly certain of it. H. What makes you think you thought you knew him? C. Why, she says I did herself. H. She says so? C. Yes, she does. And I did know him, too, though I don't remember it now. H. Come, how can you know it when you don't remember it? C. I don't know. That is, I don't know the process, but I do know lots of things that I don't remember, and remember lots of things that I don't know. It's so with every educated person. H. After a pause. Is your time valuable? C. No. Well, not very. H. Mine is. So I came away then, because he was looking tired. Overwork, I reckon. I never do that. I have seen the evil effects of it. My mother was always afraid I would overwork myself, but I never did. Dear Madam, you see how it would happen if I went there. He would ask me those questions, and I would try to answer them to suit him. And he would hunt me the here and there and yonder, and get me embarrassed more and more all the time, and at last he would look tired on account of overwork, and there it would end, and nothing done. I wish I could be useful to you, but, you see, they do not care for uncles or any of those things. It doesn't move them. It doesn't have the least effect. They don't care for anything but the literature itself, and they as good as despise influence. But they do care for books, and are eager to get them and examine them, no matter whence they come, nor from whose pen. If you will send yours to a publisher, any publisher, he will certainly examine it. I can assure you of that. End of section 20. This is section 21 of the $30,000 Bequest and Other Stories by Mark Twain. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. A telephonic conversation. Consider that a conversation by telephone, when you are simply sitting by and not taking any part in that conversation, is one of the solemnest curiosities of modern life. Yesterday I was writing a deep article on a sublime philosophical subject while such a conversation was going on in the room. I noticed that one can always write best when somebody is talking through a telephone close by. Well, the thing began in this way. A member of our household came in and asked me to have our house put into communication with Mr. Bagley's downtown. I have observed in many cities that the sex always shrink from calling up the central office themselves. I don't know why, but they do. So I touched the bell, and this talk ensued. Central office, gruffly. "Hello." I. "Is this the central office?" C.O. "Of course it is. What do you want?" I. "Will you switch me on to the Bagleys, please?" C.O. "All right. Just keep your ear to the telephone." Then I heard a "Klook, klook, 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 look, look," then a horrible gritting of teeth, and finally a piping female voice, "Yes?" rising inflection. "Did you wish to speak to me?" Without answering, I handed the telephone to the applicant and sat down. Then followed that queerest of all the queer things in this world, a conversation with only one end to it. You hear questions asked, you don't hear the answer. You hear invitations given, you hear no thanks in return. You have listening pauses of dead silence, followed by apparently irrelevant and unjustifiable exclamations of glad surprise or sorrow or dismay. You can't make head or tail of the talk, because you never hear anything that the person at the other end of the wire says. Well, I heard the following remarkable series of observations, all from the one tongue, and all shouted, for you can't ever persuade the sex to speak gently into a telephone. "Yes? Why, how did that happen?" Pause. "What did you say?" Pause. "Oh, no, I don't think it was." Pause. "No, oh, no, I didn't mean that. I meant put it in while it is still boiling, or just before it comes to a boil." Pause. "What?" Pause. "I turned it over with a backstitch on the selvage edge." Pause. "Yes, I like that way, too, but I think it's better to baste it on with Valenciennes or bombazine or something of that sort. It gives it such an air, and attracts so much noise." Pause. "It's 49th Deuteronomy, 64th to 97th inclusive. I think we ought all to read it often." Pause. "Perhaps so. I generally use a hairpin." Pause. "What did you say?" Aside. "Children, do be quiet." Pause. "Oh, B flat. Dear me, I thought you said it was the cat." Pause. "Since when?" Pause. "Why, I never heard of it." Pause. "You astound me. It seems utterly impossible." Pause. "Who did?" Pause. "Goodness gracious!" Pause.
Well, what is this world coming to? Was it right in church? Pause. And was her mother there? Pause. Why, Mrs. Bagley, I should have died of humiliation. What did they do?
Long pause.
I can't be perfectly sure, because I haven't the notes by me, but I think it goes something like this: Tiroli lol lol, lol lolly lol lol, oh tolly lol lol, lee lie lee do. And then repeat, you know.
Pause.
Yes, I think it is very sweet, and very solemn and impressive, if you get the andantino and the pianissimo right.
Pause.
Oh, gumdrops, gumdrops. But I never allow them to eat striped candy, and of course they can't till they get their teeth anyway.
Pause.
What?
Pause.
Oh, not in the least. Go right on. He's here writing. It doesn't bother him.
Pause.
Very well, I'll come if I can.
Aside.
Dear me, how it does tire a person's arm to hold this thing up so long. I wish she'd—
Pause.
Oh, no, not at all. I like to talk, but I'm afraid I'm keeping you from your affairs.
Pause.
Visitors?
Pause.
No, we never use butter on them.
Pause.
Yes, that is a very good way, but all the cookbooks say they are very unhealthy when they are out of season, and he doesn't like them anyway, especially canned.
Pause.
Oh, I think that is too high for them. We have never paid over 50 cents a bunch.
Pause.
Must you go? Well, good-bye.
Pause.
Yes, I think so. Good-bye.
Pause.
4 o'clock, then. I'll be ready. Good-bye.
Pause.
Thank you ever so much. Good-bye.
Pause.
Oh, not at all. Just as fresh. Which— Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that. Good-bye.
Hangs up the telephone and says,
Oh, it does tire a person's arms so.
a man delivers a single brutal "Goodbye," and that is the end of it. Not so with the gentle sex. I say it in their praise. They cannot abide abruptness. End of section 21. This is section 22 of the $30,000 Bequest and Other Stories by Mark Twain. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Edward Mills and George Benton, a tale. These two were distantly related to each other, seventh cousins or something of that sort. While still babies they became orphans and were adopted by the Brants, a childless couple who quickly grew very fond of them. The Brants were always saying, "Be pure, honest, sober, industrious, and considerate of others, and success in life is assured." The children heard this repeated some thousands of times before they understood it. They could repeat it themselves long before they could say the Lord's Prayer. It was painted over the nursery door, and was about the first thing they learned to read. It was destined to become the unswerving rule of Edward Mill's life. Sometimes the Brants changed the wording a little, and said, "Be pure, honest, sober, industrious, considerate, and you will never lack friends." Baby Mills was a comfort to everybody about him. When he wanted candy and could not have it, he listened to reason and contented himself without it. When Baby Benton wanted candy, he cried for it until he got it. Baby Mills took care of his toys. Baby Benton always destroyed his in a very brief time, and then made himself so insistently disagreeable that in order to have peace in the house, little Edward was persuaded to yield up his playthings to him. When the children were a little older, Georgie became a heavy expense in one respect. He took no care of his clothes. Consequently, he shone frequently in new ones, which was not the case with Eddie. The boys grew apace. Eddie was an increasing comfort, Georgie an increasing solicitude. It was always sufficient to say, in answer to Eddie's petitions, "I would rather you not do it," meaning swimming, skating, picnicking, berrying, circusing, and all sorts of things which boys delight in. But no answer was sufficient for Georgie. He had to be humored in his desires, or he would carry them with a high hand. Naturally, no boy got more swimming, skating, berrying, and so forth than he. Nobody ever had a better time. The good Brants did not allow the boys to play out after 9 in summer evenings. They were sent to bed at that hour. Eddie honorably remained, but Georgie usually slipped out of the window toward 10 and enjoyed himself until midnight. It seemed impossible to break Georgie of this bad habit, but the Brants managed it at last by hiring him, with apples and marbles, to stay in. The good Brants